The central theme of the WHO program is that we are an anti-victimization program. And we also have components that talk about, the mental health aspect of all of these problematic situations. One of the core topics that we address in all of our grade levels is sexual abuse. For the middle school curriculum, we not only talk about sexual abuse, but we also highlight harassment and start conversations with our students around what harassment is. Because as our students get older, so do the complexities of victimizing situations. So the key things you want to stress with this program, with this lesson, are: what is harassment? What does that mean? Are there different forms of harassment? For this lesson, we do highlight sexual harassment, but there are other forms of harassment, and you can see components of all of them together. We see sexual harassment, we see physical harassment, verbal harassment. It kind of is a form of bullying, but heightened almost. So being able to navigate those conversations with your students in a mature, healthy way. Oftentimes with our lessons on taboo topics, we do see that it becomes a challenge sometimes for some of our students to create a serious environment because it might strike up some discomfort for whatever reason. So being able to also empower your students to have healthy, mature conversations about this. So what does harassment mean? It's creating that unpleasant, hostile situation that's not invited. We don't welcome it. Also, another big thing that you can stress in this lesson is that concept of no. No is a complete sentence. Oftentimes, we even need to be reminded that ourselves. We do not have to justify our no with a because or a compromise. We can say no, and it should stop there. So our students can be empowered to take action by saying, no, I don't welcome this. And then, of course, finding somebody that they can trust to go to and talk through this and talk about and get the support that they need. So what is harassment? Are there different forms of harassment? And no is a complete sentence. That's kind of my new favorite phrase lately, is that no means no. This applies not only to harassment, but also when harassment crosses the line, even more than it already does, into that physical touching aspect. We do not have to do something or allow someone to touch us in a way that we do not like or give permission for. No means no. If they are touching us or treating us in a way that we don't like or give permission for, we should always get help. We should always be able to find those trusted adults in our life that we can tell when we need help. The WHO program follows those 3 rules of safety. In our elementary program, we really highlight those 3 rules. In our middle school program, you will see those central themes, but we do not spell out those 3 rules. But they can really help you have these conversations and discussions with your students. What are those 3 rules? We know. So the first step of knowing is knowing that we're in a problematic situation. And that's why it's so important to sometimes define some of this with your students and being able to talk with them about what that looks like, what that might feel like. So knowing that we are in a problematic situation, or that a peer might be in a problematic situation. Doing, so what are we going to do about this? What are some ways that we can healthily navigate this situation? Whether it's saying no, which is sometimes what we need to say. So no, do, and then tell. This one is huge. So many times I've been in classrooms, I've been in a youth setting where there are youth there, and I ask that simple question of how many of you have a trusted adult in your life? And I'm alarmed by how little students raise their hand and say, yes, I have a trusted adult. So being able to help your students identify who those trusted adults are, so that if they ever find themselves in a situation that involves harassment or another victimizing situation that we talk about in the WHO program, they can always know who they can go to tell. Physical and emotional abuse. This is another lesson that has been in the WHO program since its inception in 1981. And it continues to be an important conversation to have with our students. We continue to see rises of our youth who are involved in abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. As we get into middle school, as those children get older, we also see this start taking effect sometimes in the relationships that they're making romantically. And yes, I know middle school, it's like, what? But middle school, you guys know this. That's when we're starting to explore who we might be attracted to, and we begin dating and having relationships. And so we sometimes see habits of what they might be experiencing at home carry over into their relationships they make with each other. Abuse often does come at the hands of someone we love, someone we care about, and that's what makes it so complex and so challenging to talk about, because we have a host of emotions that we're feeling about it. So being able to discuss with your students about abuse in general, what it is, different forms of it, but also some of the feelings that they're going to feel as a result of what has happened to them, and that it's not their fault. That's a big, big thing to stress, is constantly reminding them that it is not their fault this has happened. So discuss with your students what different forms of abuse are. We can see physical abuse. In our previous lesson, we did talk about a little bit about sexual abuse. So that's another form of abuse. You can see emotional abuse. All of those sometimes go together. They go hand in hand. The scenario that you'll see in this one kind of has components of emotional abuse and sort of a threat of physical abuse. And so it gives you a really great talking piece to explore what things might look like and how we might feel if we're experiencing that. This is also a lesson that might strike up some feelings about discipline and abuse for yourself, for teachers who might be in the room as well, but also for your students. So being able to navigate conversations around the difference between discipline and abuse, and where some of those lines might sometimes be crossed, so that we understand that sometimes discipline is not abuse, but sometimes abuse may have started out as discipline, and then it crossed a line. So being able to navigate those conversations. What are some things that we can do to keep us safe? It's so hard sometimes when we think about those WHO rules of safety, the know, the do, the tell. It is sometimes hard when it comes to abuse, because oftentimes we, as children, we cannot avoid some of the abuse that we experience, especially when it's at the hands of someone that we love. But there are still things that we can do to try and stay safe, as well as start developing at least some healthy coping strategies around how to help ourselves navigate the feelings that we're feeling. And then, of course, if we can't avoid this situation and we cannot stay safe? Who are those trusted adults that we can tell? This is a great opportunity to also reiterate with your students. So sometimes that mandated reporting aspect that we all have to follow. As youth serving professionals, it is our obligation to report when we suspect abuse. So being able to navigate a healthy conversation with your students around what that means, oftentimes they may downplay what's happening because they don't want us to tell. They may even say, I need to tell you this, but you have to promise not to tell anybody. It makes it worse. Yes, this is heartbreaking, but it is our job to make sure we are getting those youth connected to the resources and the services that they need for further support, as well as the family. Everyone is going to be supported in that process. So being able to also identify not only the trusted adults, but our responsibility to them in keeping them safe.